Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Village of Riverside Board of Trustees regular meeting of Thursday, March 7th, 2024. I'd like everyone to join us and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Clerk Sol, would you please call the roll?
President Pollock.
Here.
Trustee Mateo.
Here.
Trustee Evans.
Here.
Trustee Koss.
Here.
Trustee Clarity.
Here.
Trustee Gallegos.
Here.
Manager Francis.
Here.
Attorney Pickerel.
Here.
Also present, Clerk Sol.
Thank you. We have a quorum. President's report. First, I would like to announce a call for volunteers. All of our commissions and committees and sub-boards have appointments that last a differing number of years, and they come up for reappointment, or if there's vacancies for new appointments in June of each year. So now is the time to consider making your application. Riverside is incredibly blessed to being full of engaged community members, community residents that are willing to volunteer for work on a committee and work to support their community. If you are interested, please complete an application on our website, and that will automatically be forwarded to myself and to Manager Francis. And as the time gets closer, we'll review those and reach out to different people to fill vacancies or for reappointments for those that are currently serving. So thank you. I encourage you to consider that. This week, I had the honor of representing the village twice this week at the Brookfield Zoo. 2024 marks the 90th anniversary of the opening of the Brookfield Zoo, Chicago. Many may not realize that a portion of the Brookfield Zoo, Chicago, is actually located in Riverside. And that, by the way, is their official name now is Brookfield Zoo, Chicago. This past week, I met, Manager Francis and I met with the CEO of Brookfield Zoo Chicago, Dr. Mike Atkinson, and Senior Vice President of Government Affairs and Community Programs, Jennifer Bader. Brookfield Zoo continues to invest in their spaces. Most recently, they completed an extensive $10 million renovation of the bottlenose dolphin habitat at Seven Seas. Now that renovation is complete, the dolphins have returned. Visitors will be able to see the dolphins beginning on March 22nd when their regular Dolphins in Action presentations resume for the public. I did have the opportunity on Wednesday evening to get a sneak peek of the space, and it's beautiful. It's new climate control, new facilities for the animals. Just a wonderful place, and I encourage everyone to go out and take a look at it. Additionally, the zoo is spending over $60 million on other renovations throughout the zoo property. We're excited to support the zoo and look forward to continuing our strong partnership in the future. Upcoming meetings. Next week, March 11th, the Riverside TV Commission is meeting here in room 4. Also on March 11th, the Sesquicentennial Ad Hoc Committee is meeting here in room 4. I'm not sure. Are they meeting together?
You know what? I will check that one.
We'll check that one. Maybe one of them is in a separate room.
We're just meeting upstairs in room 22.
Thank you.
Just the committee, yeah.
The Sesquicentennial Committee will meet in room 22 on March 11th. March 12th, the Landscape Advisory Commission will be meeting in room 22 here in the Village Hall. March 13th, the Economic Development Commission here in room 4. March 18th, the Historical Commission in room 22. And March 18th, Parks and Recreation Board meeting at the Public Library. Our next meeting of the village board is 2 weeks from tonight on March 21st. Upcoming events in the village's annual egg hunt will be on Saturday, March 23rd at 10 a.m. sharp. The egg hunt will take place at Big Ball Park and is for children ages 10 and under. Bring your favorite basket and collect all the eggs you can. Some eggs have a special prize. I'm sure that Director Malchiotti and his staff have cooked up another great event for our residents and their children. This event is free. Manager Francis.
Thank you. I just have one item this evening. At the last board meeting, the board had adopted the village budget, and so I wanted to recognize certain individuals again for all of their work on that document and also on the document that I'm about to show you this evening. Special Assistant to Administration and Finance, Ethan Soul, who also acts as the village clerk, Assistant Village Manager, Ashley Monroe, the Interim Finance Director, Yvette Zavala, and Fiscal Assistant, Emily Stencil. So you will see our wonderful budget in brief. That is a 4-page summary for residents to take a look at, to have an understanding of what items, projects, expenditures, revenues that the village will have for fiscal year 2024. And I'm doing this specifically for Trustee Clarity because she enjoys this infographic so much. So you will see the Village of Riverside's portion of the property tax bill in comparison to the other taxing bodies. It is also important to note that we do not have a separate park district. Parks and Recreation is under the village's tax levy. And I think sometimes residents don't realize that there isn't a specific tax levy for a park district because we don't have a park district. So while Parks and Rec has a portion of our tax levy, they still do not have a dedicated park district tax levy. So I felt that that was important. It's a great 4-page read, super summarized, gives you all of the different highlights of the village and the great accomplishments that we had last year and things to look forward to in 2024. That's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Resident comments on non-agenda items. Is there anyone in attendance that would like to comment on non-agenda items? Keeping in mind that as we go to each agenda items, you'll have the opportunity, if you'd like, to comment at that time. No one in attendance who wants to speak on non-agenda items, so I'll move on to the consent agenda. Clerk Zoll, please read the consent agenda.
Approve voucher list of bills, March 7th, 2024. Approve Village Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes, February 15th, 2024. Review and file department reports, Fire, Police, Public Works, January 2024. Review and file board and commission minutes, Parks and Recreation Board regular meeting, November 27th, 2023. Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting, November 29th, 2023. Sesquicentennial Planning Committee regular meeting, December 11th, 2023. Sesquicentennial Planning Committee regular meeting, January 8th, 2024. Historical Commission regular meeting, January 22nd, 2024. And Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting, January 24th, 2024. A resolution for maintenance under the Illinois Highway Code. A resolution of the Village of Riverside, Illinois, waiving competitive bidding and authorizing the village manager to issue a purchase order to Cook County Emergency Telephone Systems Board for the purchase of 7 radios in an amount not to exceed $59,887.17. A resolution authorizing the village manager to create a purchase order in the amount of $29,000 for Christopher B. Burke Engineering Limited to provide professional design engineering services as part of the Berkeley Green Alley Reconstruction Project and miscellaneous sidewalk replacements. A resolution authorizing the village manager to create a purchase order in the amount of $407,500 for Christopher B. Burke Engineering Limited to provide professional design engineering services as part of the Olmsted Road Sewer Separation Project. A resolution approving the sale or disposal of personal property owned by the Village of Riverside. And an ordinance amending the village code of the Village of Riverside, Illinois relative to village fees and licenses.
Thank you. Clerk Sol, does anyone want any of these items removed from the consent agenda? Seeing none, any questions on, I'm sorry, a motion, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the
I'll make
consent.
a motion.
Looking for a second?
I'll second that.
Did someone second?
Yeah, second.
Motion by trustee Gallego, second by trustee Cost. Clerk Sol, please call the roll.
Trustee Mateo.
Aye.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Costs.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Department, Board, and Commission reports. First up, we have a report from the West Suburban Special Recreation Association update.
Mary
Marianne
Ann Burko.
Burko from WESRA, West Suburban Special Recreation Association, is in attendance, and thank you for attending tonight and giving us an update on WESRA and your various programs. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. I haven't spoken since 5-6 years ago when you decided that this was the direction we were going. So I'm pleased to say that I believe Ron would agree with me, that things have gone well. We're doing exactly what we said we would do, and that would be provide and extend services to your residents with disabilities. I work very closely with many of the families. There is one person on our foundation board who assists with our fundraising. That's Kim Perry, Luke Perry's mom, and another one who's interested in joining. So you're well represented, not only on our board with Ron. Melchiotti is our current board chairperson. This is his second year in that role. So it didn't take long for him to, for us to recruit him and get him really involved in what goes on at West Suburban Special Recreation. So I'm here just to give you some brief updates. In 2000, I'll be focusing on our statistics related to 2023. All of you had received a packet. Does anyone want another copy? I have copies here. I know you had gotten it in your board packet. Okay. We have been very involved in programming in the village. We have a program called Civ Shops, and we offered that program winter, spring, and fall at the Quincy Recreation Center. We offered a yoga program in spring and fall at the rec center. We also did swim lessons in the summer at the Riverside Swim Club. And I know it's not directly, but it's in the village. What is most important to me with any of our partners, but our new partners, is really having a presence, having our program visibly available. And that is not, of course, anything I'm talking about isn't limited to the services. We have over 70 programs a season that are offered to all the residents in our partner communities. WSSRA also hosted a campfire at the cabin in September, and families enjoyed a campfire and a variety of activities. We also were involved in special events in the community. We had an information table at the Riverside Township Community Health and Wellness Fair in June. We also had a table set up at the Riverside Summer Concert in August, and WSSRA participated in the Trunk or Treat and attended the annual holiday stroll in December. As mentioned, the most important part of our presence is word of mouth, and that happens through engagement and involvement in programming, as well as having a presence in your community when there are large activities going on. Statistically, you are a small community. Currently, you have in 2023, you had 13 unique individuals with disabilities who participated in 233 programs and events. You also have a few on the wait list, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about that. But our biggest challenge as an agency, and it's really across the board, is we're competing for staff. And without staff, that limits what we can do in our services. In 2020, COVID hit us all, and it really, really changed the dynamics. And we've had to really work hard to get back not only into the same level of service, but that has been terribly, the challenge of staffing has really crimped our style. That's the best way to put it. But we continue to work really hard at that, and in any case, it is something I'll chat about even further. Inclusion is a program where we provide the additional support in your services, so whatever Ron offers in programming, families have a choice of participating in those programs, and WSSRA will do an assessment and provide staffing support if it's needed in those programs. And currently, in 2023, there were 8 individuals who participated in 25 programs. That doesn't really explain the number of hours that are involved in that, because many of those programs are aftercare and day camp. So within the statistics up there, we've added to this the service hours, and for those 233 programs, there are 1,300 service hours that we have provided support in our programs. So if you continue going across that line there, it'll tell you that we had 7 individuals without disabilities in 26 different programs. And that just means those are family events and the families participate, and we statistically keep track of that as well. That chart talks about inclusion, and that all of that information, the far right where the yellow is, what you can look at is that you had 8, as I mentioned earlier, 8 participants in, what's my number? In 25 programs. That costs the $10,000 in various years, just shows you how the program has grown. So under the budget line item, WSSRA has worked really hard to minimize the additional cost to our partners in their shares. We held fast for 4 years without any increases, and in 2024 is the first time you've seen an increase in that time period. It actually impacted your village minimally. You're actually, because of the reassessments on the northern communities that WSSRA served, that reduced your shares by $3,200. But that will be readjusted, be assured, in 2025's budget, because you guys will be reassessed next year, and then there's this adjustment that goes on with our partners. We also have focused with our fundraising efforts with our foundation. They do 6 fundraisers during the course of the year: a bowling tournament, our Derby Gala, and thank you, Doug, for joining our steering committee with our Derby Gala. We ask we have a number of legislators who are on the steering committee, and all of the mayors and presidents of all of our partner communities. And really, it's again an event where we try and broaden our footprint and get more folks at the event. If you're interested, it's on Saturday, May 4th. It's at D'Agostino's in River Grove. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great fundraiser. We also do our bocce tournament in the fall, and we also have an event called Falling for Our Stars, a casino night, and all of these events together with our holiday solicitation raised $85,000, and all of that money eventually comes back through the foundation to the association for additional services and support, and ultimately helps minimize any increases in shares. WSSRA has been asked on many occasions. We currently have about 4 partners who are interested in joining the agency, but they're in a holding pattern because of our staffing crises. We will not take any more partners on until we've gotten through this and have adequate staffing to even consider any additional partners. And the big transition in our year happened at the end of 2022. Our finance director left after 37 years of service with the agency. So that's a big transition for us. We did end up hiring from within. Our superintendent of operations stepped into the role, After going through the full interview process, we came back to square one. And the beauty of that transition is obviously it's someone who's very familiar with the agency. We have a great trust relationship, and we've really moved forward seamlessly. Certainly a learning curve because it's a different role, but we had a lot of adjustments in the reorganization of this position and responsibilities, but I have to say it's gone very smoothly. So in summary, WSSRA has taken many steps to continue to be transparent with all of our partners. WSSRA staff have worked to increase the awareness of the challenges we have, and specifically the staffing crisis is our biggest challenge. We have had a million starts and stops in the last few years, but our focus is what is on the best interests of WSSRA, our consumers, and the services we provide. As the Lopez family and the Yoya families share, they are grateful WSSRA for the wonderful opportunities they have enjoyed. They have grown socially, emotionally, and their world of friends has grown incredibly as a result. Ron, have you touched on the building project at all? Okay. Just fast forward, we are trying to get our offices located centrally, and that is something that we will be doing a partnership, and we have a very tentative, we have a partnership established with the Park District of Forest Park, but that's as far as it goes. We have funds promised from Senate President Harmon of the amount of $2.5 million, but none of that can be touched or used until more progress is being made on how this piece will lay out. The beauty of that, again, is if we can be centrally located, it certainly helps our families. We're currently housed in a school building in Franklin Park, so we're on the northern end of our communities, and that can be challenging for families who want to have direct connection with us. But there'll be more information to come in regards to that. So in any case, I want to especially thank Ron for your part on the WSSRA board as your representative of the village, as well as our board chairperson going into year number 2. You've done a fantastic job leading and advocating for the village of Riverside and all of our communities that are in the WSSRA partnership. To you as a village, I thank you all for your support, the communication that you give to us, and the word of mouth that you help us to expand our the word to the folks who could be using our services. This is critical to our success now and going forward. And as I mentioned, again, Ron has heard it a million times, staffing is critical, and in order for us to continue to grow and really continue to provide the services on the level we do, we need staff. I do have flyers. Ron will have those if you're interested. We hire our staff anyone 15 years and older. And I'd like to say that all of us know someone who has a 15-year-old sitting on the couch doing this that could be out working. And those are the folks we're interested in because we encourage them. It may or may not be a profession that they want to in the long view, but it's a great place to start. So thank you again for the opportunity to serve your residents with special needs. We are proud of our team and all that we accomplish, but we can't do it without the support of all of you. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Director Burko. We are honored and thrilled that we're members of WSSRA. Any questions? Yes, Trustee Evans.
Hi, thank you for coming today.
Yes.
And it's always great to hear from Wasra. I was wondering, you said there's a staff shortage, and that's why we have 3 people on the waiting list. 3 Riversiders are on the waiting list.
Yes.
So does the staff shortage affect all of the municipalities or just ours?
Oh, no, all. Yes, it's across the board.
I see like some of them have 100 participants, some have 90 participants.
Yeah, every program scenario is based on a first come, first served basis. So there are some programs that are more popular than others, and that is, based on when you register. The one thing we do differently for summer day camp, because it is the largest and most popular program that we offer, is we set aside slots for every district. It's an equal number of slots to start the registration or the lottery process. And that Riverside gets the same number as the Park District of Oak Park to initiate that process.
I see. And how do we notify everybody of when the registration starts? If it's first come, first served?
It's in all of our materials. It's on our website. It's virtually anywhere you look, you'll know that there is a timeline involved. And then there are reminders that are sent out.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many of the most popular programs are set up as a lottery so that we can increase the fairness of that process. Great question.
Thanks. I have another question for staff. So, do you think that it would be worth it to do a little bit more outreach about WASRA programs? I see it in the spring, summer, winter, fall guides that you can register for those things. But I wonder if we need to do a little bit more.
Absolutely, we can.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say about doing more, I think that one of the great things about partnering, coming from Parks and Rec and partnering with you is that you all are great about coming to all of our events and really, getting the word out there
That's the goal, yeah.
with everyone. So I think that not only do they have great communication about their programs with the people who've already participated in their programs, but I think that they've really done a great job about participating in a lot of things in the village and being out there and advocating for themselves as well to make sure that the word is out there. So I think there's a lot of good things happening.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I do want to emphasize that, the partnership doesn't stop at signing on the dotted line. It really is a community process, and the communication is ongoing. It's not a start and stop.
Yeah.
So I know it's a huge effort, and we try all different kind of avenues. Right now, we just packaged up 400 some more kits for what is the slogan? It's related to recruiting staff, and they've gone to all the different high schools. Their bus buddy programs. There's a whole variety of, but trying to really pique their interest. Some more fun. That's it.
Yeah.
So.
I was going to say, you're a fun group to work with too,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's always nice.
We do see you, I have seen you everywhere at all of our community events. I just wonder if the village itself, we might do a little bit more to boost participation.
Participation and staffing.
Right.
Very good. Any other questions or thoughts? Thank you again, Director Burko. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for the
to-
opportunity.
You're welcome.
Have a good evening.
Thanks. Pending business, we have an update from the Army Corps of Engineers on the Groveland flood wall. Manager Francis.
Thank you. We have our new project manager from Army Corps of Engineers is present this evening, is going to walk you through the Groveland project and where it's currently at. I did provide the board an overview at our last board meeting, but obviously the project manager will be able to provide a little bit more detailed answers to some of your questions that you had. Additionally, we do have the village engineer, Orion Gailey, that is present as well to answer any questions that the board may have as it relates to different village-related interests that perhaps Army Corps cannot answer.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I'm Tom Caneys. I'm a captain, active duty right now, doing a 2 to 3 year assignment with the district. I took over as PM in late October. I'm happy to be on this project and be working with the village. So tonight I'm going to be giving you a project overview of where we currently are, and then really ask to seek guidance for a partnership moving forward, and really how we want to proceed moving forward. So next slide, please. So starting with the original scope, so when I took over in October, myself and the project delivery team discovered that there was an issue with the total project cost of the project. So the authority we're working under for Congress for this is the CAP 206 authority, which is the Continuing Authorities Program, and that's for flood risk reduction. And that has a total project cost, or has a federal dollar limit of $10 million. So we're not able to provide any more dollars than $10 million. And with the 6535, that comes out to a total project cost of roughly 15 million and a couple $100,000. With the original scope that we had when we reached 90% in October, we were looking at construction costs at 14.3, but it would really be total project costs of it would be around $18 million. So we'd be going over our authority, and the Corps wouldn't be able to fund anything past that 15 million. So that's when I made a meeting with Jessica and with Burke, and we presented the current issue. And then since then, what we've been doing is working on a couple of different alternatives of different capabilities and different pricing to try and find the best way forward for the project and find the best product for the village and its people to manage the flood risk within the community. So what we had, the full up plan was the 2 pump stations, one in the north and one in the south of Forest Ave, and then a large underground detention centers to store water during high flood events. And then, so I'll go next slide. And so really what I want to present is a proposed alternative. So one of the alternatives we had was, it would come out to a construction cost of 8.3, but we'd be looking at a total project cost of around 12 million. So a lot further, but it removes both the north and the south pump station, no underground detention center. So really it would not improve drainage in the north of Forest Ave, but it would not be inducing a higher risk of flooding. It would just be it would be keeping what it currently is. And then south of Forest Ave along the Groveland Avenue, the main portion of the project, it would construct the flood wall as we previously planned, and then it would create 5 new separate outlets to the river. So we would, there'd be the 5 new catch basins and drainage directly to the river on the river side of that flood wall. And then the capabilities of that really it would be up to that 10-year level storm. It would be providing drainage out to the river, and then past that 10-year is when the river levels would then prevent any natural flow of water from the interior to the exterior, and then a check valve would cut it off. So there wouldn't be any, there would be the reduced risk of the river flowing. It would prevent the river from overflowing, but there would still be the risk of the interior flooding, which in the previous plan that we had, the pump stations were there to address that issue. But the figures are there for the 10, 50, and 100-year events and what our current hydraulic modeling is showing for what the interior flooding would consist of with those events. Next slide, please. So the other alternative is kind of a hybrid of the all-up and then that plan. So what this would be right around, so this would be at the $15 million total project cost. And with that, it does include, all these figures include a 20% contingency. That's what our cost engineers' typical inclusion is. So what this one does, it does still remove the north pump station, but it keeps the original design for the south pump station and those outfalls. So it would still include the flood wall, which all the plans would include the flood wall, because that's the main goal of this project, is to prevent that overtopping of the Des Plaines River in that 10 or plus year flood event. And then, so it would keep the south pump station, and then it would improve, so I'd say there, so it would provide relief along the flood wall for overland flooding up to that 50-year, 30-minute critical duration event. And then it would allow for future connections to possible future projects. So it is a large pump station, so it would still have capacity, and future projects could tie in and even relieve more flood risk within the community. Next slide, I won't touch too much on it, but this is our hydraulic engineer wanted to at least provide it as an option where it could be even an in-between between those two, where we have a pump station in the south, but it would be a reduced capacity pump station. We did not run hydraulic modeling on that because it would be a cost to do all that, and we don't know really what the village is looking for. So if there is that in-between that the village would like, then we could look into that potential, but that's the only reason why I had this here. And then, next slide, please. So really, and then last thing to brief to the board before I open it up to questions is really current cost share status. So the first figure is funds received. So that's the funding that was contributed to the project from the federal and non-federal side. The expenditures to date is what the project has spent. And then the PPA proportionate share. So that third line is really what the project partnership agreement that we have is focused on. So it's 65% federal, 35% non-federal. And so that would be the share that each owe right now. And the last line is the funds overage shortage. So that's just the very first line, and the third line kind of doing the math. So USACE is currently, so the federal side has 350 excess dollars towards the project, and currently the non-federal side has a deficit of $95,000. Next slide, please. So that didn't center correctly, but yeah, so I'll open up to questions right now. Whatever you have, and then I have my contact information there as well. And then I told Jessica, I'm always on, my phone's always on. My last job, I was 24/7, so please feel free to reach out to me, anyone, anytime.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Manager Francis, is there anything you'd like to add or clarify?
If Clerk Sol, if you can go back to the previous, thank you, to clarify the questions as it relates to any questions as it relates to funds received. So basically, at the beginning of this project, a certain amount was appropriated by the federal government. And so you see it's a little over $1 million figure under federal for funds received. And then you see the non-federal, which is the funds in which MWRD contributed on the village's behalf. And so then you see the breakdown of the expenditures and with regard to what's been paid by federal versus non-federal that's been picked up, and then what the proportionate share is, which is basically the total costs altogether, and the 65% for the federal and the 35% for the non-federal. So we do owe a payment to Army Corps of Engineers, which we're coordinating with MWRD, because it's essentially we have to make the payment and then MWRD now reimburses us. So it has changed from when we initially entered into the partnership agreement, wherein MWRD was able to pay Army Corps of Engineers directly. Certain things changed at the federal level that we had to change that particular setup. So I figured President Pollock asked me to just kind of clarify that table a little bit. Hopefully that was helpful.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry if I caused any confusion.
I assumed that MWRD wasn't included in that non-federal, and I wanted to make sure that was clarified.
Yep.
So,
And we include them in all of our partner meetings and
Right.
when I meet with the village, and so they're always involved. And we met with them recently too as well, and they still are adamant that they are dedicated to the project, seeing it through. They want this to happen. They want to provide a good service for the people of the village of Riverside and hopefully reduce that flood risk and get people's homes hopefully a lot more protected. So I think they are, and they just said when talking with them, they just need that request letter. So I know we talked about that.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'll open up to questions.
Before we go to the public comments or questions, any questions from trustees? I can come back to you after the public.
I have a question. When did you plan on having this done, completed?
So the original schedule was plans completed basically right around now, and then hopefully going out to solicitation and contract in the spring of this year. But due to when we hit that total project cost access, and then so basically we didn't have a clear path forward because we didn't have the funding to be able to execute a project, and we can't put it out to contract and if it's not that.
How long will this
That's
project
achievable.
take now?
I'm sorry, was that?
How long will this project take to complete it?
So depending on, so that's why we're looking for that design and basically the capabilities that we're trying to bring with the project. So I think it would vary, but design remaining would be like a couple months, half a year of design, and then it would go up for contract. And then construction would start post-contract, depending on weather and time of the
So
year.
you can't give me a timeline as to when this will finish, is that right?
I can't give you an exact date right now, but I mean, it really does not.
So if I hired a contractor to come to my house and say, I need you to do this and this and this, they tell me, I don't know when I'll be done, is that an accepted answer?
Nope, I guess,
Okay.
I don't know.
All right.
So just to be clear, I can understand why it's difficult to answer because we don't know what we're building yet. Until we know what we're building, it's kind of hard to put a schedule on it. And we're not certain of the funding.
Correct. So to follow up on the statement, in the conversations with MWRD, they have expressed support, but ultimately we need to figure out what we want to do over there, because then we need to request what that additional funding is for the MWRD board to then approve as a partnership agreement, a change to our existing, what have you. And so we need to be able to answer those questions before we make the request of them.
So the original plan is still on the table theoretically?
The original plan of the 18 million, potentially. So they said there was a commitment to see the project through, but they have not run that $8 million figure to their board, because that's almost 4 times what they initially agreed to as part of the partnership agreement, because they had obligated approximately 2.6 million.
And has anybody there evaluated these 3 alternatives, to your
So-
knowledge?
So now, MWRD has received the information. We did ask them if their team had any feedback to provide it directly to Army Corps. I don't know that they had any supplemental feedback. Burke Engineering did review what was provided as it relates to the plans and the design elements. There are some challenges with removal of one of the pump stations. As an alternative, one of the items that was discussed is with removal of one of the pump stations, if water remains on the roadway, and Orion, you can feel free to opine at any point in time, but essentially any water remaining on the roadway, because it is a combined sewer over there, that could create challenges and create basement flooding. So it wouldn't necessarily be from the river, but it would be from water sitting on the streets. And so that's a concern, and so that was one of the items in which we discussed with MWRD, because typically MWRD does not do sewer separations as part of any of their flood mitigation projects. One of the things that I emphasized is, well, this is a unique situation, and if we're trying to cut down on costs, this could be a longer-term solution, especially given the fact a pump station you need to maintain regularly, whereas a sewer separation, you may be able to, first of all, greater longevity, less maintenance, and so that would be something that their staff said they would be open to, just given the unique circumstances involved on the Riverside project.
Just a question. Are we being asked to give some direction here so that we can go to MWRD to see if there's funding available? And start there.
Yes, so we're asking for the discussion to be started with the village board of what are some of your preferences or thoughts related to this particular project? Because right now, they are at a standstill simply for the fact that they don't know what they're building at this point. They don't know if we're eliminating a pump station, if we want to keep the pump station and try to seek additional funding. And so those different pieces become challenging as it relates to moving forward with the project. We can't start looking at real estate acquisition if we don't have, or rather property easements, if we don't know what we're doing.
If I may, understanding that there's tremendous complexity with this, it seems like we are being put in a very difficult position to, I don't think any of us are engineers, right? And so we're, based on a couple of slides, we're supposed to pick a direction to go see if there's, or give a suggestion of thoughts of direction to see if there's funding for it. It seems like we ought to have an indication of what funding there is before we make some sort of judgment call here, is my first point. Like, all things being equal, I think we would probably pick the very nice option with all of the pumps in the original plan that keeps all the water out of our streets and basements. But in a resource-constrained environment, we may have to make a different choice. That's my first point. And my second point is, and I apologize if I've got the landscape wrong, but I think we still have to decide that we are building something before we decide what we're building. Right? No? Yes.
No, I think the village has never, correct me if I'm wrong, but the village board has never said, we are building this no matter what.
We
Because
have
we've
made
never,
a- we did make a
we've
commitment.
indicated that we intend to, that we would like to. But it would be impossible and irresponsible of the village board to do that without all the information that
Well, it's impossible because we never got a plan to begin with.
Right,
From
right. We
years
don't-
ago that we've been waiting for.
We
never got
we
that.
don't have all the information to say this is a project that you know, we're committed to. But I don't want to give the wrong impression. I mean, it is clear, past boards, and I think I speak correctly for this board, we want to do this. We're just trying to figure out how.
Well, past boards wanted to help the residents who were going to be in the middle of flooding, now look at the options, and it's not going to help them at all.
It-
So, kind of looks like we shouldn't do it at all, really.
Well, I wouldn't say there's no benefit to a flood wall where it's going to prevent the Des Plaines River overflowing. Yes, there's interior flooding issues, but
Well, that's what residents don't want to happen, and that's going to happen anyways.
I guess, I'm sorry. I don't-
Look at your options on option number 2.
Yes, but it is,
No improvement to drainage area north of Forest Avenue. You're going to tell me that a homeowner's going to be comfortable with that? No
It-
improvement to drainage area north of Forest Avenue.
If I may, I was going to ask for clarification on that. I think what you mean by that is that, correct me if I'm wrong again, but the alternatives all would focus on preventing river water from getting into
yes,
this area.
that was the main goal from the 2015 feasibility study where the project started.
So when he says no drainage, no improvements to drainage, he means that rainwater coming from the sky that hits that
It'd be
ground,
interior flooding would deal with,
interior is
the current
not
status
being
it
dealt
currently
with
is.
Which
through
is
the
currently
flood
mixed
wall.
in with our sewage, isn't that right?
Yeah.
And MWRD
Right.
is not going to do anything to help mitigate that issue.
So the reduced cost would just focus on preventing river water from getting into the neighborhood. There are other things that the village could do independently now or in the future. But, and again, going back to the 18 million, the original plan, it had both, right?
Correct. It had the pump
So it had all the
stations.
pumps. So
Yes, there's a
that
pump station in the north
rainwater-
and the south.
Pardon?
There's a pump station north and south of
Right.
First Ave.
So that rainwater landing on the ground would be pumped out through the wall into the river. And the
We have
river
both
water.
stations.
At
So
both
now we have an
stations,
option to
right.
not have that.
Right,
Much
if we
reduced.
want to reduce costs, you know, well, it is, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, if we have an obligation to look at all options, when we start talking about, you know, spending $18 million and potentially some of that of our own money, if, depending on what MWRD is doing, we have an obligation to look at cheaper options. And so that's what we're doing. Also, I want to circle back. I personally don't think that, I'm not expecting you to make a decision
No,
tonight. You don't
I
have
didn't mean to
enough
cut you off. I apologize if I phrased that wrong. It was,
It's okay.
this is a presentation to you, and then that's ultimately, the end goal is to get that, but I'm not putting you on this hot seat tonight. It's by any means.
So I think the summary of this is, in layperson's term, is that the original $18 million, we could still do that. We don't know if we're going to get $8 million from MWRD. That's a big ask from them. And that would resolve both overflow of the river, and it would provide interior drainage to get water, rainwater that lands on the ground, it back into the river. The options, the alternatives, all are various levels of just addressing the river overflow.
Correct, sir.
So,
Well, river overflow, and then the option one does address up to a 10-year flood event.
okay, good. That is good clarification. So option one, which is,
So
would,
between that 5 and 10-year
Have-
level event for a
Got it.
30-minute critical duration.
yeah. So that's kind of the summary. Does that make sense to people?
It does.
Because I've had a hard time wrapping my head around all this.
Thank you,
But I
sir.
think it's finally becoming clear to me, too. So I don't know that I can't, I think it's too much to ask you to make a decision tonight, clearly. But we want to inform you and start to think about it. But, I'm sorry, Trustee Evans, you had
Village Manager Francis, could you refresh my memory? A few years ago, this board committed a certain amount of money to this project.
So the village board committed to an agreement with a PPA with Army Corps of Engineers. And so the funding has always come from MWRD. And so that was the agreement, and still to this day will funnel, the village will pay for it and they get reimbursed by MWRD. That was the agreement, that's been the discussion of the board. But at any point in time, if the village board decides that they don't want to continue down this path of this project, then we would have to reimburse MWRD for any monies that they have spent.
Thank you.
So may I, if we're not being asked to make a decision, which I appreciate, it's a lot, it's just a couple of slides and it's a big choice here. What is a reasonable next step? What are we being asked to give direction on, or what is reasonable for the village? And I'll say that with, I don't want to leave the impression that I'm not in favor of a solution. We continue to hear from our residents that they want a solution, and they are literally begging us for expediency. And so with that in mind, I'm asking, can we give direction to partner with MWRD and see what range of budgets are possible so we can evaluate these?
So their staff can't give the affirmative, yes, we're gonna be able to fund this. We have to make the formal ask of, so if you want, we can make the formal ask of the 8 million and see what they come back with. If
that goes poorly, can we make a reduced ask?
we can certainly do that. And perhaps with the initial ask, then we get a gauge of where they're at. Once again, we're getting feedback from their staff, but ultimately, similar to me, I can give feedback to Army Corps, but I'm not, ultimately, I cannot say the village board will appropriate or pay the difference for this particular project, or approve the different standards for this particular project.
Because they have a board themselves, right?
MWRD has their own board, correct? So, and then they also, similar to us, have a budget that goes through the different cycles, and so having an understanding of what that schedule looks like, which we do. Army Corps did provide us, now obviously this is subject to change, but we had tentatively everything being done by the end of 2028. And so that could obviously be modified, that schedule, but tentatively having MWRD working off of that schedule and figuring out then how would they budget accordingly, because it's all resources, right? Riverside can't have all of their resources for all their partnership agreements. The 2.6 was a pretty large ask for our project. But I'm hopeful that we can certainly find out how much we can make the formal request. So if that's what the board would like staff to do, I can draft a letter to MWRD making that particular request, and then seeing then what comes back from their board. And so it would be more of a timing item.
So before we do that, and I want to come back to that question and get feedback from the board, but I think if there's anyone from the public who wants to speak to this, I think now would be a good time to hear from the public, yes.
So, Patrick O'Loughlin, 18 West Avenue, I'd be directly affected by this. I'm not in favor of this at all, for many reasons, which I've stated over the many years that this project has been going on. This has been a lot holding over our families' heads. If you're gonna decide to go ahead with this without thinking of the people who actually live on the street, you should just buy us all out and take care of it and do it yourselves. That said, have you considered other options aside from a wall? There's a forest preserve right across the river that is in not such great shape. One of the goals of the Forest Preserve District is the maintenance of floodplains and increasing the usage for that. Could a partnership be done with the Forest Preserve District to allow for water to go into that area, and possibly plants, et cetera, that can help not just soak up the water, but also clean the water for when it comes back into the river? Have any of those possibilities been explored? All we've ever heard is build a wall, build a wall.
Is that complete?
Yes.
Manager Francis, you want to respond to other options that we've looked at over the years?
Sure, and the village engineer can certainly provide additional feedback as well. My recollection is that Army Corps of Engineers and our staff also looked at doing some type of a water retention area, and based on the area that's allotted in the forest preserve, that would be insufficient. And so therefore, that's not an option. As it relates to circle back on a question that was posed at a previous board meeting with regard to non-structural solutions, it was evaluated. And one of the things that is done as it relates to Army Corps' process is essentially they have a ratio, cost-benefit ratio that they have to do to see if whether or not a project is viable or not. And with the non-structural, that ratio did not make sense. And so that's when they came to the structural. Now, given that the costs have gone up, that non-structural really becomes a non-existent type of discussion, simply for the fact for the cost-benefit ratio of where we're at today. And that's why Army Corps, and I don't want to speak for our project manager, but that's why they won't reevaluate it. Currently, this project it is a federal project, and so if certain, once again, I don't want to speak for you, but it is my belief that perhaps if it was evaluated in a different way at this point in time, then funding would be lost in the future for this particular project if we went away from doing a flood wall. And so that's certainly, if the board wants to discuss that, that would be 100% on the Village of Riverside. This project in and of itself only becomes possible because of federal funds and because of the contributions that are being made by MWRD, because the village has significant water and sewer needs throughout the village because we're almost 150 years old.
Any other public comment? Yes, sir. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Dan Myers. I live at 77 Lincoln Avenue. For those of you not familiar with that area, it's north of Forest Avenue. And I have the privilege of living at probably the lowest point on Lincoln Avenue. Our house is most proximal to that. So we've lived in our house since 2006, which means that we've been here through 2 river overflow events. I love that term, by the way. That's a great, I'm still using that. And in both occasions, just to give you a little sense, the area north of Forest Avenue, and I think it's a little true for the area south, is a bowl. It's 5 inches lower in front of my house than it is at the end of Park Avenue, and 3 inches lower than it is on Forest Avenue. So when the river decides to come over the berm and come over the top of the hill, it comes straight down the road to my front yard, which is a blast. When routine water falls from the sky, my neighbors and I have gotten really good at moderating that water. We can pump our basements. We're very talented at that, and it's not a problem. When the river overcrests the berm, what happens is it only takes the river getting about 4 inches above the surface area to come over our foundations and into our basements. And water loves to find its own level and will fill any low spot it can. If you're really interested, I brought a photo of my basement in 2013. You're happy to look at it. But this is what it looks like when your basement has 6 feet of water in it. You, at that point, have lost your washer and dryer, your furnace, your hot water heater. We've replaced our electric service twice in our house because there's no pump in the world that can keep that water out of your basement as it's coming in. So while I appreciate your question about the benefit of pumps and no pumps and wall without pumps, we would say that the wall is an essential item, an element to this, because we can handle most of surface water. And that if just keeping the water from rushing down the street and into our basements would be a huge save. The rest is gravy, and love the idea, because anything that improves water flow and water removal from the surface after that, it would be fantastic. But understand fiscal responsibility, and you're asking exactly the right questions around that. There is some talk. I know that it's common to say, well, my property has never flooded. Well, that's true. For some people, their property has never flooded. But that's, again, because if you go to the south end of West Avenue, that's about 5 inches higher than my front yard. So in order for the water level, and I'm going to be way out of my league here, so help me out here, in order for the water level to be an issue 5 inches higher than my front yard means that the water in my house has to be 5 inches higher before it becomes an issue for somebody else who's never flooded. So I know that argument doesn't really relevant in this decision, because it doesn't ameliorate the problem at its core. And that's something like 4.5 million more gallons of water that would have to be in there. And it would be almost doubling the amount of water, which would be, we'd have a whole lot of other issues at Central School if that much water was in the bowl, to affect houses that have never been affected by the flood. And I think it's fantastic that there are members of the village who voted in the most recent survey to support this project that don't live in the area affected by it, because they're saying as a community, we think this is really important. Even if they don't understand the public-private partnership and they don't understand where the money's going to come from, they probably in the back of their mind go, I'm probably going to have to pay for this. Somehow I'm going to pay for this. And yet 2/3 of the people who voted in the survey said, it's not going to benefit me at all, but I think I have a civic responsibility to be on the hook for that. And that was really heartwarming for us as community members to know that there's people around the community that want to support this project, even though they won't directly benefit from it. So we would just say, you're asking exactly the right question to break it into 2 parts. Do we believe that this is something that's for the good and the welfare of our community that we should invest in? Yes or no? And then, what's the right way to do it? And we should look at the pros and cons and the right way to do it and have a conversation about the various plans that are provided in an expedient manner to ultimately get to an answer. So I just wanted to help people understand and appreciate that reality of living at ground zero is significant and substantial. And, knock wood, it never occurs. But in both of those flooding events, the forest preserve area west of the river was completely underwater. And that was all fine and good, but it still came over the berm and it still ended up along our block. So anyway, I answer any questions about living in that space, but I just wanted to make sure that you got a sense of what it was like to live at the lowest point on Lincoln Avenue.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
I want to make sure, is it fair to characterize your position that you would prefer, you would prefer a wall with no pumps over no solution at all?
Yes.
And if you had to force rank, right, if you had to say, we could pursue the expensive option with all the pumps, but it might take us 2 more years or 3 more years, or it might extend out the project time, but perhaps we could get to a more slim solution in a faster period of time. Would you prefer the faster solution or a little bit longer term with all of the pumps and bells and whistles?
I am nowhere near qualified to answer that question. But what
Neither
I
are we.
But what you're doing anyway.
But what I might ask is a variation on the stories that are the options that were presented today is like, what phasing is possible? Like, do you have to, in for a penny, in for a pound, do it all at once? Or is this one of those things where, like, we added our French drains when we could afford them, and then we added a second sump pump in our basement when we could afford it. And if this process could be scoped to ultimately be X, but we're going to do steps in order to get there over time, and we just know that that's a phasing thing, like, I think, well, that'd be terrific, but I'd want to understand the costs of that, the feasibility of that, if that was even a doable thing. Because I'm not anywhere near qualified to answer that question.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions of the residents who spoke? So it seems that our next decision is what to ask MWRD. Is that
That's
correct?
fair, yes.
So I think that I can safely guess that everyone would say, hey, if we can get the full 8 million, let's ask for it, right? It's a no-brainer.
Can't sell it if you don't pitch it.
Yeah,
Ask
so
nicely.
I think what I would like to do is further strategize with Manager Francis in the next week or so, and then come back to you again with a strategy on how we would approach MWRD. I mean, I want to be clear; they've been great partners in this, and I want to be clear because I want them to know that too, that we appreciate all that we've done, all that they've done to partner with us on this. So we, unless any
I have
other
some questions for the
Yeah,
captain.
Sure, go ahead.
Just for clarity, the 3 alternatives include raising the berm on Groveland and the wall on Park Ave?
Yes, to tie into each other, yes. To the elevation of 618 is the elevation that needs to reach to be able to handle that 100-year flood event from the river, so.
And it will be along Park, too?
Yes.
Okay. My second question, and Mike, welcome to our project, by the way. Thank you for the update. SHPO process, the State Historic Preservation Office, is it the same issue with timing? You can't go to them and start that process until you know what it is that we want?
Yes, so we've done initial coordination, which isn't much, but the final coordination to get approval or disapproval and then a mitigation plan, what we need for that is the set, what features are going to be there, what isn't, because that might affect whether they approve or have a non-compliance with the project. So really, we're just on hold. It's the same kind of story.
But I'll push back on that. Pumping station or no pumping station, it's still going to look the same to them, right?
The wall portion, yes, but if it does have a pump station, that would affect.
Thank you.
So yeah, it would be a slightly different thing, and then it would just be another resubmittal and then another process.
Okay. Thank you.
And we're trying to limit staff member costs too. So if we don't have someone working on that, we don't have to charge to it.
And I have a question as well. So if we did go with a berm, can we later on decide we want to build one pump station and then later on build another one?
Yes, I mean, That is definitely a possibility, because it could be modular, if you say. There's definitely opportunity for future core projects, or I know we talked with them when we met with MWRD that they might have some functions to do a smaller pump station project as well. So that is a possibility, yes.
Can I just ask, the original, this original scope of work that was designed, this was designed because this is what the Army Corps thought would be the best solution, I'm assuming?
So in 2015, that was the study done that the 2013 event spurred the Des Plaines River feasibility study, combined feasibility study, which this project was part of, deemed they came out of that the flood wall would be the best portion forward. Once we went into design, the PED phase, putting it into design, that's when the issues of the inland flooding were identified, and I can't speak, I wasn't with the core of the project during that time, but I imagine it was communicated that, hey, we're preventing this river flooding, and so there's this inland flooding, and then the solutions were devised to address that.
Okay, perfect.
And President Pollock, can we ask Mr. Gailey if he has an opinion?
Sure. Anything you want to add, Orion?
Yes, I think.
You'll come to the mic, please.
I think the Army Corps has done a pretty good job of coming up with some other alternatives, but I'm not 100% sure that those three alternatives are the best alternatives. So I would say maybe we want to look into that a little more as well. One idea that we've had that we've relayed a little bit to the Army Corps is potentially eliminating that north pump station, but separating the sewers up there and bringing all that water down to the south pump station that would have the ability to pump it all out. So I would suggest we continue to look at some of those alternatives as well.
Good, thank you. Do you have the direction you need?
Yes,
I think I
in
do
coordination
too.
with you.
I think I do too. Thank you again for attending. I also wanted to say we received, the trustees received a couple of emails today. We received emails from the past, from residents. And I want to thank the residents that came out here tonight and those that have corresponded with us. Everyone's been very respectful and strong in their opinions, which is one of the things that makes this village a great place to be. So with that, we'll move on. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, a resolution approving an agreement with Williams Architects regarding architectural services and authorizing the village manager to issue a purchase order in the amount not to exceed $60,000. Manager Francis.
Thank you. At the last board meeting, Mark Bushhouse from Williams Architects received some feedback from the village board relative to next steps related to facility, community engagement, et cetera. And so within the packet is an agreement outlining what those services will be, what facilities and areas will be touched upon. They will do a new evaluation of facilities based on some changes that have happened since they last did the facility study and assessment. And the item that I wanted to draw your attention to specifically is you'll notice that the purchase order amount is not to exceed $60,000, whereas the agreement is actually for $50,100. And the reason why the purchase order is at $60,000, that is in case the board requests additional renderings. That $50,100 does not include the reimbursable expenses, and so instead of staff having to come back and do a change order, it's just all inclusive. And so if it, at any point, it does exceed that $60,000 amount, then staff would come back for a change order. Also, I want to note that as part of the scope of their services, they will have 3 meetings with village staff, and they will attend up to 5 board, commission, or community engagement meetings. Anything beyond that would be based on the fee schedule included with the resolution and agreement.
Thank you. Trustees, any comments, questions? Anyone from the public want to comment on this item? Seeing no comments or questions, someone would like to make a motion to approve.
I'll make a second.
Motion by trustee Mateo, second by trustee Gallegos. Any discussion of the motion? Clerk Sol, please call the roll.
Trustee Mateo. Aye. Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Koss.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion's approved. C, motion to approve Village Board strategic goals for fiscal year 2024 and beyond. Ethan, could you put the goals on the screen, please?
Yep.
So the Village Board, since late last year, has a couple of meetings where we've discussed goals and strategies, and this is an initiative that I pushed for, because I believe it's very important that we give direction to our staff and to our community as to what our priorities are. And so with feedback from all of the trustees, input from all the trustees, a survey of the community, which was very helpful and well responded to, we were able to summarize our goals into half a dozen or so that I want to quickly go through here tonight. One, and these are in no particular order. They're all of equal priority. We have the ability to address all of these goals, so there's no reason to, in my mind, to prioritize. We can just, we will focus on all of them. And so in no particular order, one is to continue to prioritize infrastructure improvements. The combined sewer system is a big one in that category. In our street and sidewalk maintenance program is another one. We've also got repairs to the water tower that are needed. Initiate new programs or activities intended to attract and retain businesses. Our survey of the community really ranked this high. In fact, this was the one that stood out to me as much, if not more than any other responses to the survey, is that our community is well aware of our need and the benefits of attracting and retaining businesses in this community. They not only provide revenue for village services, they provide services to our residents so they can get those services in town. They don't have to leave town for a good restaurant or a haircut, whatever case may be. Continue to work with Army Corps of Engineers and Metropolitan Water Reclamation District to reduce flooding and or the consequences of flooding in the neighborhood around Forest, Groveland, and West Avenue. This is what we were just talking about this evening, and so I won't go into any further detail there. Expand and improve Parks and Recreation Department programming. Another item that scored high in our community survey. We are preparing a survey on Parks and Recreation with the intent of doing a master plan for our Parks and Recreation Department and programs. And that therefore is listed as one of our goals. Create a plan to address space and facility needs. We've had that discussion several times recently, and we approved a contract tonight, so we're already making progress on that goal. Continue to implement and expand sustainability and environmental health initiatives. This is, an obvious goal for a village such as Riverside. We're a village in a forest, and we need to, it's part of our DNA to care for our environment. We've made a lot of progress with the C4 plan. Trustees Marsh Osga and Trustee Evans have represented us in that, and we'll be seeing more on that coming up in the near future. Plan and implement events and recognitions for Riverside Sesquicentennial celebration. We formed a committee co-chaired by Trustee Gallegos and Trustee Marsh Osga. They've been meeting on a regular basis and coming up with a lot of exciting ideas to celebrate Riverside's 150th anniversary in 2025. improve appearance of major transportation corridors, including BNSF Trainscape. We're behind the scenes making some progress there, hopefully, but that is an important entryway into our village for those riding the train, and we want to make a good impression as well as along Harlem. Foster more collaboration and stronger working relationship with other local government bodies, including but not limited to local school districts 96 and 208. This community is somewhat unique in that our school districts and our village, our elementary school district and our village share roughly the same boundaries, so they are a major part of this community, and we want to make sure that we're supporting them in every way we can. Maintain and strive to improve the village's AA+ credit rating. Thanks to Manager Francis and our staff, we have a very high credit rating, but we still need to be cognizant of the need to save money wherever and whenever we can, and to make sure that residents are getting the most for their dollars, and that we're saving dollars wherever we can. So that's our strategic goals draft. As I said, I think having those goals is very important for the community to know what is important to us. It's important for staff to know so they know what to work on. It's not only a statement of goals, it's a statement of our values and what we value as a community. So with that, I'd like to ask Manager Francis to briefly just give us how staff will utilize these goals and keep them in the forefront.
Thank you. So staff has a copy of these, and so when there is an item that comes before the board that it falls in alignment with one of these particular goals, it would be noted on your agenda history sheet to draw your attention to it, and so then it'll be able to also better track the various achievements of the village board as well.
Any questions or comments on the strategic goals?
There's been a lot of compiling and a lot of editing, and I thank you and you and you and probably others for putting this together. It looks really nice.
Great, thank you. If no other questions or comments, can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
A second.
Motion by Trustee Gallegos, second by Trustee Evans. Any discussion on the motion? If not, Clerk Soul, please call the roll.
Trustee Mateo.
Aye.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Koss.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Motion is approved. I want to thank the trustees for their time and effort in developing this. I think it's a good benchmark for the village moving forward, and I hope that this village will continue to utilize this process. New business, an ordinance amending the village code regarding administrative adjudication of village code violations. Assistant Village Manager Monroe.
Thank you. So although I did prepare the memo you have included in your packet about adjudication changes to that process, I have attended adjudication on a regular basis. We currently have our building code enforcement officer that regularly attends, as well as our building inspector that represent our operations and community development. And there are also community service officers that participate in this process as part of the traffic enforcements. And so the village has the opportunity to adopt the recent changes to the state of Illinois statutes, where it would allow us to use home rule adjudication procedures as part of our adjudication process. And so I'm certainly happy to answer questions specific to our experience with adjudication. We issue about anywhere between 30 and 45 to 50 citations for the year. So we're doing a couple a month at least, and they get rolled over for various reasons based on progress and challenges in enforcement, honestly. And so that's why this makes it especially attractive for us to go into this process. And so if it's okay, I'd have Attorney Pickrell just highlight a couple of the things that it allows us to do, and we can answer any questions after.
Thank you. So you'll know when you look at I'll begin with a little bit of background to give context. Our ability to adjudicate ordinance violations locally arises from the Illinois Municipal Code. There's one section that governs non-home rule municipalities and another section that governs home rule municipalities. Obviously, up until this point, and maybe that'll change, we've followed the non-home rule regulations. What this does is allows us to adopt the home rule regulations. That was reflected in a recent amendment to the Illinois Municipal Code that allows us to do that. So one of the benefits of there are several benefits. The key one first is it increases the breadth of what we can adjudicate. When you're in the non-home rule context, you have to kind of find your source of authority to adjudicate various subjects. So for example, we don't have an inherent right to adjudicate building code violations. We have to adopt another division of the Illinois Municipal Code to do that. And when you adopt it, you have to adopt all its procedures and its restrictions and its defenses. And so when you are prosecuting these, you have to follow multiple sets of procedures, which creates pitfalls and potential for confusion. When you have home rule, you have an absolute right to enforce these, and you don't have to adopt these other procedures. And this has a real impact on what we do. So for example, as a non-home rule community, we are subject to the defense of in the building code context, that if by the time the building code what you do is there's a building code violation, you write a ticket, the code hearing is several weeks later, and if by the time you get to the code hearing, you've corrected the building code violation, you are mandated to forgive the violation. There's no fine. Now, that's really not much of an issue if you have one-offs and people are having individual issues. It does become an issue where you have somebody who's a chronic problem and they are using the system to perhaps not keep their buildings up to the code that they should, knowing that there's not really going to be a consequence so long as they fix it before they get to the hearing. Now, say if we adopt this ordinance, which gives us home rule authority, we are not going to be subject to that defense anymore. We can, then the discretion falls to the prosecutor. Now, if someone fixes their building code violation before the hearing, the prosecutor can elect to simply not prosecute if they so choose. But if, on the other hand, they find that this is a repeated event, the prosecutor can continue and seek an adjudication and a fine. So it basically gives us a lot more authority to adjudicate. One other important aspect is that our enforcement mechanism is more muscular. We have a certain amount of enforcement authority as a non-home rule municipality, but under the home rule authority, our rulings, the hearing officer rulings, has the same weight as the ruling from a circuit court. And so, we always had the option to go to circuit court. It's an expensive process. The benefit is that the circuit court simply has more authority. So if we get a ruling and a judgment if we adopt this adjudication revision, and we have that ruling has the same weight as the circuit court, which means we can take that ruling, go to court, and we don't have to prove it again. We just register with the court and say, we would like to enforce that. And that enforcement, generally speaking, involves taking the person who owes us money, pulling them in and saying, we're going to do a citation to discover assets. They have to answer where all their assets are under oath, and the court can immediately say, I want that asset turned over to the village. And if you have a bank account and there's an amount of money you owe, you can get an order to the bank to turn over the money. If there's another asset, you can lien it, you can garnish wages. There's a whole number of enforcement mechanisms that courts can order. Those are now immediately available to us if we adopt this. We have to wait a 35-day period, but it's generally available. So in broad strokes, what this does is it gives us greater authority to adjudicate, and once we come to a resolution, greater authority to enforce our rulings. The only caveat to any of this is that this is a brand new law. No court has interpreted it yet. I wrote this ordinance applying what I saw as the black letter law of Division 2.1 of the Illinois Municipal Code. It's conceivable that a court would curtail our authority in some way, I will be mindful of that. If and when that ever happens, I will alert the village and we will adjust accordingly. But as I said, this amendment is indistinguishable from other home rule clients and their adjudicatory processes. So if, and you'll see if you go through it, there's a number of other amendments. Really, all those are to align our processes and procedures with home rule authority. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Any questions for,
I'll just make one more comment to allay some concerns and thinking about this very broad authority that would be applied. That certainly would be the case, but we plan to continue to just use our standard adjudication month to month. So we hold an adjudication just once a month. This doesn't increase or change that schedule in any way. It wouldn't alter our patterns, and we need to follow the requirements for any citations written and the notices required for those. It's outlined in the ordinance. So, and our general philosophy is compliance with this. Many of our cases brought are generally minor. This is really just being put in place or being requested to be put in place to address the chronic concerns that we do encounter from time to time.
thank you. Questions or comments from the trustees?
No.
Anyone from the public want to speak on this? I see none. Someone like to make a motion to approve the
I'll
ordinance?
make a motion.
Second.
Motion by trustee Evans, second by trustee Mateo. Any discussion of the motion? Clerk Sol?
Trustee Mateo.
Aye.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Koss.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Galagos.
Aye.
Motion is approved. An ordinance amending Title 8, Chapter 2 of the Village Code relating to commercial filming, photography, and taping activities. Assistant Manager Monroe.
Thank you. We come forward to you tonight to just modify a couple of provisions within our existing code. We do have standards for requirements for people to get a permit through the village for certain commercial filming activities, certain photography and taping. The ordinance here is to add a provision, well, essentially two provisions, clarifying that the owner of properties where commercial filming or photography is to occur are responsible ultimately for acquiring the required permits. So it applies a penalty if there are not permits submitted and approved within the specified timeframes. So these exist currently in our code, but there wasn't a provision to address the responsible party if this is not followed as a procedure. There are instances, and have been recently, where there are traffic considerations, there are general pedestrian and public nuisance issues that can arise when you have commercial filming and we're not prepared for that. This identifies ways to address this as part of our village code, and they'd be subject to citation through our adjudication processes.
Thank you. Any trustees have any questions or concerns, comments?
I just had a question about the fines. That's a separate issue from the ordinance. Is that correct?
Yeah, this invokes, although the ordinance previously said that we are required to do that, it didn't specify a particular fine for noncompliance. This just says that the village's standard $750 fine will apply to violations of this section of the code.
Okay, so I guess then my question is $750 enough to make people want to pay, to make people want to actually get the permit instead of just paying the fine?
It's the maximum allowable by law.
We can and have issued, you can issue one daily. So if there is filming that's taking place, they would need to essentially weigh the benefits of providing the appropriate deposits that are refundable generally, or paying that $750 per day out of pocket.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? I see no one from the public wants to speak on this. Someone like to make a motion to approve the ordinance?
So moved.
So seconded.
Motion by trustee Cost, second by trustee Gallegos. Any discussion on the motion? Clerk Sol, please call the roll.
Trustee Mateo.
Aye.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Cost.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Motion is approved, the ordinance is approved. Trustee reports, are there any trustee reports this evening? Trustee Mateo.
I'll try to keep this brief, but get out your calendar if you like nature. We have some events coming up in May and June. So May 11th is Global Big Day, which is a global day where people around the world observe birds and then submit reports on what they've seen. It's a great way for citizen science work to be done. So that's May 11th, a Saturday. And we're going to have a bird walk and other activities yet to be determined. We're working on it. And then June 2nd, the LAC is having a native plant sale, teaming up with Stellar Natives again. So that's Sunday, June 2nd. So look forward to those. More information to come.
Thank you. Any other trustees? Thank you. The board does have a need for an executive session this evening to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employee or legal counsel, and to discuss probable imminent or pending litigation. The board will not reconvene, and no final action will take place. I would ask for a motion and second to adjourn to executive session.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Motion by trustee Gallegos, second by trustee Mateo. Clerk Sol, please call the roll.
Trustee Mateo.
Aye.
Trustee Evans.
Aye.
Trustee Cost.
Aye.
Trustee Clarity.
Aye.
Trustee Gallegos.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.